Good morning, everyone. Xin chào các bạn. Nice to see you. My name is Darren Radu. I am one of the co-chairs of Learning Together Vietnam, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here to UNIS. We're very happy to see you, and we're excited about a great day of learning together. So, to start, I'm going to just make sure that you have access to the AI translation. For the first two speeches today, we'll be using AI as a translator, so that'll hopefully help you to understand what your speakers are saying. So please take a moment to scan the QR on your device. So we're very proud to welcome you here. I get to start the day by first introducing our head of school. So this is our head of school, Dr. Liz Gale. She arrived from Taipei after years as a school leader there over the past few years, and she joined us in August and immediately was faced with floods, parking issues, lots of hitches, and navigated it all with curiosity, grace, caring, and kindness. And she managed the storm really well. We're really lucky to have her here. Her family is here as well. And she had a big event just 2 weeks ago. She welcomed a baby girl. So, yeah. And she looks like she's doing amazing. So I have the honor of introducing her. We're really grateful that she's here to speak to us today. I'm going to proudly introduce Dr. Liz Gale.
I was telling someone earlier that the baby's actually the easy one in my family. It's my other two kids that seem to need all the attention these days. I'm so excited to be here. This feels great. It feels amazing to see this room filled with people on a Saturday morning. So I'm going to start off just saying, Xin chào, quý vị và các bạn. Good morning, esteemed guests and fellow educators. On behalf of UNIS Hanoi, it is my great pleasure to welcome more than 400 educators, researchers, and educational leaders to the 2026 Learning Together Vietnam Conference. Now, looking around this room, I am filled with both pride and optimism as I see so many individuals who share a deep commitment to the future of education. Now, at UNIS Hanoi, our mission guides everything that we do. And it is, guided by UN values, we inspire all learners to strive for personal and academic excellence and empower students to create positive and sustainable impact. Now, Learning Together Vietnam is a powerful reflection of that mission in action. While our daily work focuses on the students in our classrooms, we also believe deeply in the power of partnership, sharing ideas, learning together, and strengthening education across the wider Vietnamese community. Our theme this year, Learning to Change, Transformative Approaches for Education, speaks to the urgency of the moment we are living in. As you all know, the world is transforming rapidly, from advances in artificial intelligence to the pressing challenges of sustainability. Educators everywhere, we are all grappling with the same question, which is, how do we best prepare our students for a future that is evolving way faster than we can imagine? At UNIS Hanoi, we believe that that answer lies not only in a commitment to fostering personal and academic excellence, but also in nurturing curiosity, creativity, resilience, and a deep sense of responsibility to the world around us. Our role as educators is not simply to transmit knowledge, but to inspire transformation, empowering students to think critically, collaborate meaningfully, and ultimately contribute to positive and sustainable change in their communities. Today is not simply about listening to presentations. It's about building a community of practice, one that stretches across schools, across regions, and across educational systems. After 6 successful years, Learning Together Vietnam has grown far beyond its original beginnings. What began as a local professional gathering has evolved into a truly national conference. Today, we are joined by educators from across the entire educational spectrum, from early childhood all the way up through higher education, along with researchers and government officials. We are honored to welcome delegates who have traveled from the northern peaks of Dien Bien, of Lao Cai, the central highlands of Lam Dong, and the coastal regions of Haiphong and Ningding. Your presence elevates this gathering from a local conversation into a national movement for educational excellence and innovation, and we are so happy to have you all here. Events like this do not happen without extraordinary teamwork. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to our organizing committee, Darren Radu, Hung Huang, Tanai Naik, along with the invaluable support of Nichelle Turpin, Wen Do, Zhang Pham, Lin Lei, and Zhong Zong, and many other dedicated colleagues whose tireless work behind the scenes has made today possible. Can we just take a moment to give them all a big round of applause? I would also like to thank our 70 guest speakers who will lead more than 50 engaging and thought-provoking sessions throughout the day. Your generosity in sharing your expertise reflects the spirit that defines this conference: educators learning together in service of students. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Fu Hua. Fu joins us from Saigon South International School in Ho Chi Minh City, where he serves as an elementary STEAM instructional coach. With more than 15 years' experience in education, he has become a leading voice in robotics, inquiry-based learning, and integrated STEAM practices. What makes Fu's journey particularly inspiring is his background. Before entering education, he worked as a professional graphic designer, a path that allows him to uniquely bridge creative design thinking with technical problem solving. As a VEX robotic coach whose teams have competed at the World Championships, he understands firsthand how thoughtfully designed learning experiences can foster innovation, resilience, and collaboration for our students. Fu's work reminds us that when educators create environments where students can explore, design, and collaborate, we unlock extraordinary potential, exactly the kind of learning that empowers young people to create meaningful and lasting impact. So please join me in giving a very warm Learning Together Vietnam welcome to Fu Hua as he helps lead us into this important conversation about learning to change.
There I am, up there. So, in grade 6, I was asked to do the exact same thing. My teacher asked me to stand in front of the whole school and tell the story of how my family came to Canada all the way from Vietnam. But at that time, I didn't know the whole story. I knew little small pieces here and there. I knew I was born on an island, but I didn't know everything. So I had to go home and ask some questions. I quickly realized that these questions were very difficult for my parents to answer. They had spent years and years protecting me so I wouldn't have to carry these memories of theirs. They came to Canada to give our family a better opportunity for me. And today, I want to share with you what I've learned over the last 40 years of piecing everything together. Because we all carry a story. We all have identity. It influences the way we teach, how we connect to students, and how we design learning. Tôi tên là He Yao Fu. My name is Fu Yao Hua. I am the STEAM instructional coach at Saigon South International School. And I'm here to talk about belonging, finding your passions, and helping your students discover theirs too. I like to call this the weave. I've got inspiration of this from Scarborough's reading rope, from the Science of Reading. The blue strand, that's my identity, my family, my name, where I come from. This yellow strand over here, that's my experiences, my education, my mentors, the schools I've worked in. And the bottom strand here, that's the way I teach, my philosophy, how I design learning. And where it all comes together, it weaves. They interact at the center. That's where it all comes together. They intersect at the center. And that's where I want to unlock the students' passions and their intrinsic motivation. But to understand the center, we need to start at the beginning. Here we are in Hanoi at UNIS. And we're going to take a quick trip. All the way down to Bac Lieu, Minh Tây, in southern Vietnam in 1979. These are my parents, newly married. At that time, my mother's house was taken from the military. My dad, he was drafted to go fight the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. My grandfather said, "You have no house, you're not going to war, you're going to find freedom." So late one night, my grandparents, my parents, and my two uncles boarded a ship, a fishing boat similar to this, and they escaped Vietnam. They didn't know if they were going to survive. They didn't know where they were going to end up. Out at sea, they were stopped by pirates. They took their food, they took their water, they took their fuel, they took their gold. This is what they were going to use to start their new life. This happened over and over and over again. But eventually, they were rescued, and they were brought to this island, Palau Tenga. Now, it's a 5-star resort, but back then, it was a refugee camp. This was my mom was pregnant at the time when she left on that boat, but she didn't know it. And a few months later, I was born on this island. This was my first home. This is my birth certificate. This is my first document. This was my first picture, a few days old. You can see it has my boat number on it, even though I wasn't on that boat. And it has my name, He Yao Fu. And a lot of you know that He is a Chinese name, and Yao, it means wisdom or to teach, and Fu means promise. Here's a picture of my parents on that island. They applied for refugee status in Australia, and they were denied. They applied to the US. They were also denied. They applied to Canada, and they were accepted. So we packed everything up and moved to Canada. The day after we had left the island, Australia has sent a letter accepting us. I almost grew up Australian. Instead, we landed in Barrie, Ontario, a small town in Canada. And in 1983, I became a Canadian citizen. And this is where my Canadian story begins. Also, my parents made another decision for me. They decided to change my name from Fu to Frankie, a Canadian name. This gentleman here, Frank, he was working with my father when we first moved to Canada. My father didn't really speak any English, but this gentleman took our family underneath his wing. He invited us to Christmas. He invited us to family reunions, picnics. He opened up his house for us. We became part of his family. My father even called him Dad. So, out of practicality and respect, they named me after him. Frank, Fu. Phonetically, they start with the same sound. My parents thought kids would make fun of my Vietnamese name when I went to school, so they changed it. This shaped the way I think about students today as well. How many are changing parts of themselves just to fit in school? By 10, my name was legally changed from Fu to Frank. At school, I was Frankie. At home, I was Fu. As many of the students we teach today in international schools, they have this one identity at school, and they have a different identity at home. So, being the only Asian Vietnamese student in school, I kind of stood out. But when I played sports, I quickly realized that I could blend in. I didn't stand out because I was Asian. I stood out because I was good at sports and I excelled. This is a picture of us after winning the championship game. I was the goalie who stopped the shot, which won the championship. For the first time, I was just a teammate. I didn't need the spotlight. I just belonged. And that's what I think about our students. Where is a space that they can just feel simply a part of the class? This is my high school. I did academically pretty well, but I also loved my communications technology class. That encompassed graphic design, web page design, photography. It was an elective course. I actually took it 3 times because I just loved what I was doing in there. I also did well in math and physics. And when university applications came around, I applied for engineering. But to be honest, I did it to make my dad proud. This is the university that I started my engineering education at, Laurentian University up in Sudbury, a very cold place in Ontario. This was one of my first experiences, algebra class. The teacher would stand up at the board, write, lecture, write, lecture. There was no interaction. There was no connection. we were all invisible to him. Because if I, a confident student, could feel invisible, what was everyone else feeling? The only time I flourished was when I was in the computer lab. I was designing CAD projects for my group, and I spent hours and hours in that room. Then I realized I wanted to be a designer, not an engineer. So after 1 year, I quit being an engineer and going to engineering school. And that decision, that pivot, was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, because I felt like I was disappointing my father and my family. I needed to follow my passion and do something I really loved. I really loved graphic design, as I found out in high school. That decision was the first time I actually followed passion rather than expectation. I graduated from graphic design and got a diploma after 2 years. I then moved back home. I decided to take a postgraduate class in web page design. And also, I was playing varsity volleyball at the same time, another passion of mine. When I finished that, I wasn't ready to start working, so I took a 2-year business marketing program and played volleyball at the same time as well. 3 diplomas, a very non-linear educational path. But for the first time, I loved learning because I was invested. After, I started working for the government of Canada. I started designing e-learning courses, ironically, for engineers. And after that, I ended up working for the Source by Circuit City, a big electronics retail store. There, I was building e-learning courses for over 800 employees all over Canada. I was sitting behind a computer designing content, but I didn't see the aha moments. I didn't see the struggle. I didn't see the learning. At that point, I didn't have the skills to be a teacher yet, but I knew I wanted to become a teacher instead of being an e-learning developer. So I had the idea of applying to Teachers College, and I got accepted to the University of Toronto. My aunt and my uncle told me this was one of the most prestigious schools for teaching education in the country. So I had to take this opportunity. So I quit my job, took a loan, and I moved to Toronto. Halfway through Teachers College, I had the idea of maybe possibly teaching overseas. I had friends who taught in Korea and in Dubai, and I thought, hey, that could be me as well. So late one night, I did some research. I was looking for international schools all over the world, and I stumbled across the International School of Ho Chi Minh City. I found the email address of the director. I emailed him and asked him, what do I need to do to work at an international school like yours? He told me he was going to be at the Search Fair in Toronto and that I should go. So at the fair, there's a lot of booths. I went straight to the Ishmik booth. He looked at my resume and he said, I can't hire you. You're still in Teachers College. You don't have 2 years experience. But that lady down there, Mary Lower, she's starting a brand new school. Go see her. So Mary, she looked at my resume. She looked at where I went to high school. And she said, that's where my sons went to school. So ironically, we were from the same city. And she gave me a chance. She gave me an interview. The next day, we had that interview. And she told me, you have zero experience, but can you fix my laptop? So that was a strange question. At that time, you could take the battery out of a laptop, put it back in. I pushed the power button. It turned on. She said, "You're hired. You're my new IT director, or IT coordinator. Let's get you to Vietnam." And so that's where my path changed. This is the international school, Saigon Pearl. When I first moved there, it was still under construction. The school was incomplete. The only system they had was their email system. I was in charge of setting up their school information system, their LMS. I was there also onboarding teachers, going to the airport, picking them up, because I was there 2 weeks earlier and I kind of had a head start on everybody. And also at the same time, Mary, who only spoke English, was in leadership meetings with the business director and the director of marketing, who spoke Vietnamese in the meetings. So she didn't understand what was going on. And she asked me, "Can you understand Vietnamese?" And for the most part, I said yes. So she promoted me from IT coordinator to IT director in 4 months of being at the school. So I jumped really quickly, really fast. I worked there for 2 years, and then a job opened up at the International School of Ho Chi Minh City. This was my dream 2 years previously, and it was happening. I went from a small startup school to one of the most established schools in Vietnam. This was an amazing opportunity. At Ishmik, I met this gentleman. His name's Sam Sherritt. He was the PYP coordinator at the time. He was an expert on inquiry. He just didn't talk about inquiry. He embodied inquiry. This was a style of teaching I had never seen before. They don't teach you this kind of stuff in Teachers College. He was giving students voice, choice, and ownership in their education, in their learning. And I thought that was amazing. I learned so much from him. I was also given some pretty amazing opportunities as well while working at Ishmik. So at Ishmik, I was given the opportunity to start the one-to-one iPad program from grades 3 to 5. I also taught MYP design. And when the secondary school students moved to the new building, we had all these new open spaces. And I was given the chance to build the school's first makerspace. I've never opened a makerspace before or created one. I didn't know what I was doing. So I talked to some people. I did some research. We put a Lego table right in the middle. I painted a wall green. We had a sewing machine. We had some iMacs. I got an email from IT saying to pick up a printer. I thought it was a color printer, so that was pretty cool. But as I unboxed it, it was actually a 3D printer, one of the first ones in Vietnam. I was so proud of it, I brought it up to UNIS for the Vietnam Tech Conference, and I showed it off, and I did a whole workshop on it. So those were the first things in my makerspace. It was one of the most popular places in the school at recess time. Kids were coming in. There was a point where I had almost like 50 kids in there, and I was like, this is a safeguarding thing. I need to kind of limit the kids. But they were having fun. They were learning. They were doing things different than going out at recess. Also, teachers were sending me students that they didn't know what to do with when it came to like programming, building robots, building stuff out of wood. This student here, she spoke Hebrew only. But for her PYP exhibition project, she wanted to write a cookbook. But she had to practice her recipes. She had to come up with them. So we built a makeshift kitchen for her. She made the most amazing cookbook, even though English was her second language. I started to realize that we can make anything happen in this space. And we could actually provide students with the tools and the space to create. In 2019, we ended up leaving Vietnam. We wanted to be closer to our family. My grandmother, my wife's grandmother, they were getting old, so we wanted to be relatively close. So we moved to Panama. It was a hard move for me because I was living in Vietnam for 9 years and it felt like home. But we wanted to be closer to our family. Panama was very hard for me. I didn't know the culture. I didn't know the language very well. I didn't belong. So I had to find where I could fit in. I found a softball league, so I was playing softball. We made friends with families with small kids. And then one day I stumbled into the gym and I saw this happening. This was Vex Robotics. And I saw this and I said, wow, this is something I really wanted to do. But COVID happened and that shut the whole world down. We all went online and we taught for months and months. And while I was online, we realized that we couldn't even go home anymore. And we really missed Asia, and then we really wanted to go back. And so we moved to Singapore. And the person who hired me, his name is Paul Swanson. Paul used to work here at UNIS a long time ago. So he knew that I was Vietnamese. And he knew me as Frank. But I wanted to come back as Phu. And he gave me that opportunity. We changed my email address to Phu, even though all my documentation and my contract was Frank. This was a place for me to reinvent myself, to discover what it was like to be Phu professionally. There's a few times I introduced myself as Frank. I slipped up because I was just so used to it. But over time, it felt natural. And it started to grow on me. At the same time, I walked into the innovation center that I was in charge of, and I saw a Vex robot just sitting there. Some kids had built it over the summer. And I asked, whose robot is this? And he said, oh yeah, we bought this for some kids. They really wanted to get into Vex robotics. And then I said, I'm going to coach these kids. This was my chance to start a Vex robotics program. So after a year, the program grew from 1 robot to 4 robots. Post-COVID, we were able to host the first national Singapore championships. And this was my first event that I got to do. And I really loved it. And that's where I started my Vex career. After living in Singapore for 2 years, it just didn't feel like home anymore. And so we started looking for other jobs. I was offered a job in Romania as an IT director, but a job opened up at Saigon South International School, and I jumped all over it because I wanted to move back home. And then this is a picture of our new upper elementary school campus. Coming to Vietnam, I was starting to feel that I wasn't being split anymore. I felt whole. Because I asked HR, can I change my email to Phu? And they said yes. Can I introduce myself to the faculty and students as Phu? And I said yes. So I was really excited to come back as Phu. So this is my first makerspace. I inherited this from the previous person that was working here. For kids to come in, I had to create these relationships to make sure that they felt belonged into this space. So we created these little entry point stations and projects for them to do. It was one of the most popular places at recess for kids to come in again. As the school expanded, students from the middle school moved to their new building, and we got to renovate their old spaces. My teaching partner, Denai Marumba, and I, we had 4 open old classrooms that we could turn into anything we wanted. We turned it into the Spark Lab. We turned it into a think tank. And this is my new makerspace. The walls were retracted, and they could be closed and open. We always kept the doors open because we like to have the students flow throughout. We designed it around these 3 ideas: low floor, high ceiling, wide walls. The low floors, easy for anybody to start, an easy entry point. High ceilings, space to grow. We had Vex Robotics IQ here for the kids, so who really wanted to code and engineer and build. And the wide walls, that provided many pathways for kids to come in. And once they got in there, they explored, they shifted, they created. This is Dr. Moran, our head of school. Last week, I held a workshop at the Full Steam Ahead conference. She came in. She made a little button. That was her entry point. That was the wide walls and low floor. She ended up seeing me working with some other teachers making stickers. So she wanted to make stickers as well. And in the end, she was making friendship bracelets. I had to kick her out because my workshop was finished. And she didn't want to leave because she was having so much fun. But it's just not only for students. It's also for adults. It was a space that we created where anybody can come in. They can play and then create and learn. When I look back to my journey from refugee camp, a small town in Ontario, to engineering, to working corporate, and working in international schools, building maker spaces, it doesn't feel linear. It feels woven. There's that first strand, my identity. Vietnamese, Canadian, Chinese, Frankie, Foo. A child trying to belong. An adult learning to be whole. That second strand, my experiences. Starting up schools, working in established schools, starting systems, Vietnam, Panama, Singapore, Vietnam again. Mentors like Sam, heads of schools like Mary who took a chance on me. These experiences shaped who I was. And that last strand, that's how I teach. I give students voice, choice, and ownership. Low floors, high ceilings, wide walls. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from this story is that every student who walks into your classroom is carrying strands that we can't fully see yet. Their identity, their experiences, their questions about where they belong. Those strands are already there. We can't control their story, but we can control the space. We can lower the floors, we can raise those ceilings, and we can widen those walls. When we build spaces rooted in trust, those separate strands start to come together. Students don't have to split themselves to succeed. They don't have to be one person at school and another person at home. If we can create spaces where they feel safe enough to enter, challenging themselves to grow, and free enough to choose their path, maybe they won't have to spend years trying to piece those weaves together. They've already been woven. That's the classroom I'm still trying to learn to build. Thank you.
Vu, thank you so much for that inspiring journey. It's hard to follow up to that, but thank you again. And can we give another round of applause for Fu, please? Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tanai Naik, and on behalf of the Learning Together Vietnam 2026 Organizing Committee, I would like to once again express my excitement for today. This is a chance to come together as a group of educators and share in both our humanity and our commitment to inspiring our next generation of learners.
Xin chào tất cả các bạn, tôi là Tanai Naik. Thay mặt ban tổ chức LTV 2026, tôi xin bày tỏ sự vui mừng của mình một lần nữa về ngày hôm nay. Đây là cơ hội để chúng ta, với tư cách là một nhóm các nhà giáo dục, cùng chia sẻ và cam kết truyền cảm hứng cho thế hệ học sinh tiếp theo.
Thank you, Ms. Mai, for translating for me as well.
Tôi là Mai ạ.
As we prepare to engage with the day of learning, I would like to share some important housekeeping reminders.
Trước khi bắt đầu hành trình ngày hôm nay, tôi muốn chia sẻ một số lưu ý rất là quan trọng.
At UNIS Hanoi, these are 3 of our 6 values. We value diversity, curiosity, and community. And we hope that as you go into learning spaces today, you lean into those values.
Ở UNIS, chúng tôi tôn trọng, đa dạng, ham hiểu biết, cộng đồng. Và chúng tôi hy vọng rằng là khi các bạn tham gia hội thảo ngày hôm nay thì các bạn cũng cùng chúng tôi tôn trọng những điều này ạ.
I'm going to spend a bit of time just talking a little bit about some of the expectations for today, just to help everyone have a safe and enjoyable experience. Also at UNIS Hanoi, one of the things that's very important to us is our norms. We ask people to be fully present when in a learning space. If you are part of a conversation that requires you to have a dialogue, we ask you to pause, paraphrase, pose questions, pay attention to yourself, and of course, presume the positive intentions of both the presenters and the participants in the room.
Chúng tôi mong các bạn lưu ý, ngày hôm nay khi chúng ta tham gia các hoạt động hội thảo, chúng ta hoàn toàn tập trung vào các phiên hội thảo. Chúng ta biết khi nào cần tạm dừng các hoạt động cá nhân. Chúng ta hãy tóm lược nội dung một cách rõ ràng vào những quyển sổ mà chúng ta được trao. Chúng ta hãy đặt câu hỏi và để ý tới mình cùng những người tham gia thuyết trình. Và mong các bạn luôn giả định mục đích tích cực trong hội thảo ngày hôm nay ạ.
We also ask that if you could please be on time for sessions. And you might see that some sessions will be very popular today and the rooms might be full. If that is the experience, please do find another session. Every session has incredible value and connection to what you do. Please silence and limit cell phone use. I know many of you will want to use it to take photos and videos, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, do your best learning.
Và rất là mong các bạn lưu ý ạ. Thứ nhất là việc có mặt đúng giờ trong các phiên hội thảo. Thứ hai là nếu các bạn vào đến một phiên hội thảo mà chúng ta đã thấy là kín phòng thì rất mong các bạn đi đến các hội thảo khác, bởi vì tất cả các phiên hội thảo đều có giá trị và đều có ý nghĩa rất là quan trọng với tất cả mọi người. Mong các bạn khi tham gia các phiên hội thảo thì hãy yên lặng và hạn chế dùng điện thoại. Chúng tôi biết là các bạn rất là muốn chụp ảnh và quay video, nhưng rất là mong mọi người hạn chế làm phiền đến những người xung quanh. Và mong là các bạn cố gắng dành thời gian tối đa để có thể học tập trong các phiên hội thảo ạ.
So this is our agenda for today. We're going to close in a second. We're going to take a photo together outside. But these are the sessions today. There will be breaks in between. And of course, an opportunity for a slightly extended lunch where you can get to know some of the presenters and some of your fellow colleagues for today. All sessions are either 75 minutes or 35 minutes long today.
Đây là chương trình hội thảo ngày hôm nay. Giữa các phiên hội thảo chúng ta sẽ có các giờ nghỉ và buổi trưa thì chúng ta sẽ có giờ ăn trưa. Trong giờ ăn trưa chúng ta có thể gặp gỡ bạn bè cũng như là những diễn giả trong ngày hôm nay. Và chúng ta cũng lưu ý rằng là các phiên hội thảo sẽ kéo dài khoảng 75 phút hoặc 35 phút tùy thuộc vào phiên hội thảo đó. Ngay bây giờ chúng ta sẽ có hoạt động là chụp ảnh tập thể. Sau khi chụp ảnh thì chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu ngay phiên hội thảo đầu tiên lúc 9:15.
And then the final thing we wanted to say is that UNIS Hanoi is a very busy place. Sometimes the school is busier on a Saturday than it is on an actual school day. And so what you'll see is that we have many members of our community here for our community programs. So we ask that at all times you please wear your yellow lanyard and keep it on you throughout the day.
Trường UNIS rất là bận rộn. Chúng tôi có rất nhiều các hoạt động cộng đồng cũng như là các lớp học ngày hôm nay. Vì vậy cho nên chúng tôi mong muốn các bạn khi mà di chuyển ở trong trường thì chúng ta đeo cái sợi dây màu vàng của mọi người trong cả ngày hôm nay ạ.
We invite you to learn about our spaces, to see some of the things that are happening in the classroom, but we would ask that you please respect some of the rules around photography. Please make sure that we don't have any photos of students. In the classes, you might also see that some of our teachers put photos of their own students on the wall. So if you do take a photo, please make sure that even photos of students are not in your photographs.
Các bạn lưu ý rằng là các bạn có thể được phép đi vòng quanh trường, quan sát các lớp học của chúng tôi cũng như là có thể nhìn các hoạt động đang diễn ra. Các bạn lưu ý rằng khi các bạn chụp ảnh thì các bạn không chụp hình của học sinh, cũng như là nếu như các bạn thấy có những cái bức ảnh mà có học sinh ở trong các hình ấy, thì các bạn cũng lưu ý là tránh các bức ảnh đấy giúp chúng tôi ạ.
And then finally, I think Darren's saying that we'll start at 9:20. But most of the spaces that we will be in today are in the red boxed on the map. That is the B8 building, the B9 building, and this building B10. So that's where most of the conference sessions will be happening. And then in those spaces, there are toilets, which is also important. So please be mindful of using toilets that are labeled with adults. We have toilets that are male, for female, or gender neutral as well.
Các bạn có thể nhìn thấy là trên bức hình có những cái hình đóng khung màu đỏ ấy ạ, là ở B8, B9 và B10. Chúng ta đang ở B10 ạ, là những nơi sẽ diễn ra hội thảo ngày hôm nay. Các bạn có thể tìm thấy toilet là cái việc rất là cần thiết, đúng không ạ? Ở B8, B9 và B10 đều có. Trước các cửa của toilet sẽ có các cái dán nhãn ấy ạ, là toilet cho nam, cho nữ, hoặc là toilet có thể dùng cho cả nam hoặc nữ, đều có thể sử dụng chung. Thế thì các bạn lưu ý là sẽ sử dụng những toilet cho người lớn, không dùng toilet của trẻ em ạ.
And then lastly, if you are lost or you're unsure of where to go, anyone wearing a blue lanyard, or I don't know if anyone here is wearing one of the blue vests, they will be able to help you out with finding the right place for any questions you have about having an enjoyable experience on our campus today. So I wanted to thank you and wish you all a wonderful day of learning. Thank you for joining us today on such a powerful day. And thank you again to Fu for kicking us off with such a thoughtful and powerful keynote speech.
Rất là mong được đón các bạn ở tất cả các phiên hội thảo. Trong ngày hôm nay các bạn lưu ý rằng là có những người mà đeo các sợi dây màu xanh, hoặc là những người mặc những cái áo màu xanh ấy, là những người mà các bạn có thể hỏi thêm thông tin nếu như cần thiết. Ngày hôm nay của chúng ta đã sẵn sàng và 9:20 là giờ chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu phiên hội thảo đầu tiên. Bây giờ chúng ta sẽ ra chụp ảnh. Cảm ơn anh Phú đã giúp chúng ta sẵn sàng tâm lý để cho ngày hôm nay diễn ra thật là tốt đẹp ạ.
And so we'll start the first session at 9:20, but before we do that, if we could ask you just to go outside where there's the grass, we're going to take a big group photo to commemorate the day, and then we'll get started with a great day of learning. Cảm ơn, thank you everybody.
Ngay ở phía ngoài B10 ạ, là có một cái sân cỏ. Mời tất cả mọi người đi ra ngoài sân cỏ đó và chúng ta sẽ chụp một bức hình chung tất cả mọi người. Sau đó thì 9:20 sẽ là bắt đầu phiên hội thảo đầu tiên. Vì vậy là sau khi chụp ảnh xong thì mời mọi người đi luôn đến phiên hội thảo mà mình lựa chọn ạ. Dạ vâng, chúc mọi người có một ngày